there are teams of men moving through the mountains in western Iran. But they're not on a patrol, they're not on a border unit from the IRGC. They are PDKI Peshmerga teams, trained, coordinated, and operating deep inside territory that the IRGC thought that it controlled. Well, now you've been put on notice, you don't fully control those areas anymore. And then above them, somewhere up at altitude, things are watching every move the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps makes in real time. We're talking about the Space Force, satellites, potentially even advanced drones that might not be there right now, but could be there at the snap of a finger. So while every camera on Earth is pointed at Tehran this week with what's said to be millions of people, coffins draped in Iranian flags, crimson banners of vengeance waving over a city that's simultaneously, supposedly, grieving and then threatening to take out the President of the United States at the same time. Literally, they threatened that from one of their stages. So completely separate war right now, though, is erupting in Iran, and Iran doesn't want anybody to know about it. It's in the mountain belt of western Iran, 3 different provinces, about a 100 nautical mile active front, and the IRGC is fighting on both sides of the border at once. So they're actually caught up now in a multi-phase war. Hardline ideologue Ali Akbar Rakfopour, Raqqa not going to work here too much longer is probably what they should call this guy. He publicly told his followers that there were drones already tracking Trump and called it a massive opportunity that can easily be executed from thousands of kilometers away. Yeah, sure, bud. Yeah. You're really important. You look really cool with your awesome robe there, and you've got a lot of rhetoric. Oh, weird. Someone from Iran with a lot of rhetoric. We've never seen this move before. You're so unique. You're so creative. But Iran's army spokesperson announced this morning that the military was fully prepared and had used the ceasefire period to improve its combat power. Obviously, they're going to restash, do what they do. The IRGC commander appeared in public for the first time since the war in a baseball cap, surrounded by plainclothes security, and at this point it's pretty clear that he's hanging out with General Tuna and General Salami. They're just all hanging out, having the weirdest cocktail party of all time, where they're basically sitting around pointing fingers at each other, wondering if the CIA has infiltrated their inner circle. But these aren't confident people. These are people that just got their command structure incinerated. Supreme leader hasn't been seen since February. You know, there was one taken out, but the son hasn't been seen since February, and now they're bleeding in the mountains of their own country, getting struck by the different factions that are starting to fight in Iran. It looks like more of an uprising from the Kurds than we've seen all along, which is great, but part of me is like, hey Kurds, could we have done this a few months back? Maybe that would have been a little bit better. Looks like a unified coalition though, and potentially a playbook that could mean the downfall of the inner circle in Iran. But the insurgency is accelerating at the exact moment that the Islamic Republic is most politically divided and paralyzed. So we're going to cover what these operations could look like, what's going on from an ISR, intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance perspective, and how these operations, as they play out, could cause the crumble of the actual regime in Iran itself. And then stay for the global roundup, my friends. We're going to cover a hot topic that's going on right now in North Korea that no one is talking about that you need to know. So when it comes to the operations that are going on in Iran, the 40 chess situations, it's all about understanding that there's ripples that create new ways of warfare. And forces from the Hamza Sayed al-Shaddada headquarters launched heavy artillery and mortar fire into the Gagesh highlands between Mabar and Purashar, targeting Eastern Kurdistan Defense Unit fighters in positions there. And these aren't slouches. It triggered several hours of sustained combat. 4 YRK fighters, 2 men and 2 women, didn't make it home from that engagement. The IRGC claimed they took down 6, and then 3 days later, on July 1st, those same Hamza headquarters forces ambushed a vehicle carrying 6 PDKI Peshmerga near the village of Kezapan. The night before the ambush, though, 2 IRGC members were confirmed to be eliminated in front of their own residences inside the city of Pava. Not a mountain outpost, a city. At the same time, a checkpoint on the Banasakal Road in Kurdistan province was hit. 3 Iranian security officers eliminated in a single engagement. And these are the things that Iran doesn't want you to know about. They want to publish how they took down some of the Kurds, like we talked about a second ago, but these are not things they want leaked out to the Western media, especially the Western media elements that might be a little more pro-IRGC. A little bit of a mouthpiece of the IRGC, should we say. You know who we're talking about. And then from nowhere, a newly declared Kurdish armed group called the Kori Hawa surfaced in Kermanshah province and claimed its first 2 IRGC eliminations. The Kurdish committee's president, Majid Glai, told Fox News Digital directly, this is not business as usual. This is not like periodic clashes on the border. This is operations, and it seems to be deep inside Iran. 3 provinces all erupting in the same 7-day window. Iran responded by striking those PDKI camps in the Kurdistan region of Iraq. So they're actually going into Iraq now at this point. They went in so aggressively, though, that the Khormor gas field halted gas supplies to regional power stations. So Iran basically caused its own regional electricity crisis to try to choke off Kurdish logistics. Iran not planning something out or thinking something through. Yeah, we've never seen this move before. So Iran launched 850 strikes to try to stop this insurgency, but the insurgency opened 3 new fronts along the mountains anyways. So at this point, I think it's pretty clear that Iran isn't able to push the Kurds back in. So now let's talk about who these fighters are and how they could actually use ISR to fight Iran in the Western Mountains right now. So the tactical problem for the IRGC is genuinely brutal. The Zagros Mountains, that's the range on the Iran-Iraq border. It's some of the most unforgiving terrain on the planet. We're talking 10,000-foot ridges, narrow gorges with no road access. This is the same area where the F-15E Wizzo and Pilot were shot down and had to evade. Cave systems, tunnel networks built over decades of insurgency by the Kurds themselves. Iranian helicopter gunships struggle to operate at these altitudes. They're not advanced technology, they don't have the engines to get there, and it's very dangerous for their helicopters to operate, so it basically means no air support for the IRGC. Armored columns have one road. They can go down one road, so it leaves them very susceptible to ambushes. And the people defending this terrain have basically memorized every fold, every nook and cranny. 5 groups, 1 coalition, each brings something different to the fight. There's an armed wing, that's the Eastern Kurdistan Defense Units. They're the most battle-hardened force on the board, and they're affiliated with the PKK, operating out of the Kandil Mountains right on the Iran-Iraq border. These fighters include a significant proportion of women who have spent 2 decades running guerrilla warfare in terrain that breaks conventional military thinking minds. Their standard playbook, small 6-man infiltration teams that move under darkness down from the mountain staging areas. They penetrate IRGC patrol routes, execute precision ambushes on checkpoints and convoys, then they disappear back into the ridgelines that Iranian drones have trouble tracking through. They don't necessarily need an elimination chain, they are the elimination chain themselves with these small guerrilla warfare strikes. And then the PDKI, that's the Democratic Party of Iranian Kurdistan. This is the oldest and most organizationally mature force in the coalition. They have intelligence networks embedded inside Kurdish majority cities in Iran. They're not just scouts on hilltops. These are people inside Iranian society who can report on IRGC garrison locations, patrol schedules, vehicle movements in real time, the kind of human intelligence that can't be replicated by any drone. They're right there in the moment watching this all go down. The Kurdistan Freedom Party has been the most offensively active of all the groups, claiming multiple strikes on IRGC positions in Kermanshah and Loristan before the war even started. These are assault teams that have been running pre-planned strike packages against IRGC infrastructure for years. But here's where it gets wild. Could there be some 3-letter organizations maybe popping in and helping out? Well, we've seen some reports from Reuters and the New York Times that reported on U.S. and Israeli discussions about arming Kurdish factions. Trump did make a statement early on that he wanted the Kurds to win. But what would this actually look like? Because this is obviously shaky territory. But for me, when I look at this, 3-letter organizations would be fully focused on the eyes in the sky, providing ISR. So think about an RQ-4 Global Hawk flying at 60,000 feet. It can cover 40,000 square nautical miles of terrain in a single sortie. That is the entire Kurdish theater of Western Iran, simultaneously in real time at a resolution that lets analysts read vehicle license plates. Yeah, you can't really hide too much from these RQ-4s. Massive capability. And then MQ-9 Reapers could be loitering at altitude over the Pir and Shar corridor. They can provide persistent full motion video of IRGC patrol routes. Literally the IRGC's worst nightmare. Convoy schedules, command node activity, and feeds that can feed data directly to Kurdish unit commanders on the ground through encrypted Starlink terminals that weigh less than a laptop and cost less than half of a Hellfire missile. When Kurdish Peshmerga stop walking into IRGC ambushes and start setting them, this isn't just a coincidence. This is the difference between no air cover and being blind and being the watcher. But from the Kurdish councils, it looks like they're describing this as the shaping phase. So They're basically saying right now their goal is to degrade command nodes, air defense, and logistic networks that previously constrained Kurdish insurgent activity. So you do not accidentally neutralize every radar installation covering the Kurdish infiltration corridors, every IRGC early warning site along the Zagros front that went dark during the U.S. strikes. This is a window that Kurdish cross-border movement could walk through undetected. So the U.S. knocked down so many of the ability of the IRGC to protect its western half. Why is that? Interesting. Why are we bombing the Zagros Mountains, hitting radar sites in the Zagros, striking IRGC networks in the Zagros, when really the leadership was up by Tehran, the Strait of Hormuz was incredibly important. But when you see the strategy there to strike the Zagros Mountains, was this just opening up the window for now these Kurdish coalitions to start wreaking havoc in Iran on a whole new level and give Iran a little taste of its own medicine, right? Iran's propped up Hezbollah and Hamas, so now Iran gets to deal with an insurgency of their own. And then you add in for those Kurdish forces pre-positioned encrypted communications gear, night vision optics, lightweight anti-armor systems, and medical supplies, and you have a real battle-hardened force that can do damage assessments of their own strikes. They can deliver these strikes in real time, and the Kurdish coalition commanders can know within minutes whether an IRGC unit is neutralized or still has combat effective forces in pursuit if the ISR is persistent up and overhead. This isn't a capability these groups built into the mountains of Iraq by themselves, so the West striking down these radar sites during the conflict, during Epic Fury, seems to be a window of opportunity like no other. So Iran's radar network used to be able to see the whole Zagros front, along with electro-optical systems that could look for these guerrilla teams. Then CENTCOM came through and just gave them a new update to their software. CENTCOM came through and just helped them reduce their carbon footprint, and they called it a Tuesday. So the IRGC isn't nothing, we know that. And IRGC General Ahmad Vahidi, the commander-in-chief of the Revolutionary Guards, he appeared in public for the first time since the war began. He was wearing that baseball cap in a crowd, surrounded by plainclothes security. He was trying to remain anonymous. But at the end of the day, if anything films this dude, Mossad is sitting there like, bloop, they get like a little notification. They're like, Vahidi is hanging out with General Salami and General Tuna. This might be a perfect opportunity to introduce them to the little cocktail party in the sky. But this is the man who's commanding Iran's most powerful military force. He isn't walking around openly, he's hiding in his own country. This is the adversary force picture that we're going to see moving forward in Iran. So Iran is trying to pound those Kurdistan opposition bases in Iraq. Supposedly over 800 strikes since February 28th. The structural vulnerability is that strategy is the one that the Kurds are already exploiting. The forces there are not in exposed camps. They are embedded in mountain terrain, tunnel networks, cave systems where fixed wing and drone strikes achieve minimal effect. Iran is spending drone inventory on targets it can't reliably destroy, while the most capable Kurdish fighting force in the coalition sits in terrain that makes their drone inventory basically irrelevant because Iran can't find them. And Iran's generals have other things on their mind. As we can see, they're having to hide in their own country. You made it to the Global Roundup, my friend, so let's talk about North Korea. Kim Jong-un personally stood on the deck of a brand new 5,000-ton destroyer, the King Khan, on July 3rd and watched it fire a nuclear-capable strategic cruise missile. It didn't have a nuke on this one, but they're saying it was capable of doing it. The ship carries approximately 74 vertical launch system cells for cruise missiles, anti-ship weapons, surface-to-air interceptors, and short-range ballistic missiles, and obviously they're in the hands of a wild man who you really don't know what that guy's going to do. Luckily, China's there to keep him in check, but that's what happens when you don't put dictators in check. They get the nuclear weapon capability just like we're seeing with Kim Jong-un. And that brings us to the 40 chess strategic analysis section, my friend. So here's the single highest stakes strategic question on the board right now, and I haven't seen it framed this way anywhere else. The research I've done is making me think that there is a lot going on during this 60-day Hormuz clock. It started on June 17th, and it puts the expiration at approximately August 16th. Iran's ambassador told the World Peace Forum in Beijing this weekend that service fees will absolutely be charged after that window closes. Iran and Oman have already presented Washington with a joint fee collection framework. The U.S. rejected it immediately. Rubio said flat out no country is permitted to charge fees on an international waterway. Trump said it will be permanently toll-free, and the technical negotiations to resolve this don't even start until July 11th, after their funeral probably of both of the Ayatollahs. They're saying it's just one, but obviously Iran Iran is on their heels right now. They're in a position where they're fighting multiple fronts of an insurgency. They know that they have to hide within their own country, and they're trying to sneak in tolls into the deal for the Strait of Hormuz. What a wild situation that Iran has found itself in. And at this point, the Southern Highway in the Strait of Hormuz seems to be flowing oil. Not on the same level it was before, but reports I'm seeing is over 40 ships in the last 24 hours have transited the Strait of Hormuz, hopefully going back up as soon as possible to that 110 number that we saw before the conflict. So where do you think things go from here? Do you think we see hostilities kick back off after this 60-day window ends and Iran does what they do? They try to do tolls in the Strait of Hormuz. Do you think we see some real breakthroughs from the Kurds on the Western Front? Do you think the Free Iranian people might actually have a window to rise up in some of these Kurdish majority towns